So we're going to finish up talking about persuasive speaking today. Yay. Okay, all right. That was a muted response. So yesterday, last time we were together, we talked about when you walk into an audience to give a persuasive speech, the audience is disposed in one of three ways before you start speaking. What's one of them? They agree with you. And what do you do if they agree?
Reinforce.
You reinforce. The other one, what's the second one? They're neutral, and if they're neutral, it's because of one of two reasons. What is it?
Uninformed or unconcerned.
Uninformed or unconcerned, so you have to inform them or make it relevant. The third thing they could do is disagree, and if they disagree, what do? You acknowledge it, because if you don't, you look weak. If you do, you look open-minded, and it strengthens your position. Then we talked about reasoning. We talked about inductive reasoning. What is inductive reasoning? Speak up. It's public speaking. Speak up.
When the few represents the many.
When you use the few to represent the many. I've got 2 or 3 examples, so I believe I can make a probability about a comment about the entire class. Okay? What's the problem? What's one of the fallacies of inductive reasoning? The hasty generalization, where I really don't have enough data to make a comment about everybody in the room. Okay? What's reasoning by analogy? One-to-one comparisons. Okay? What's the problem with a one-to-one with an analogy? A false analogy, where you were comparing two things that really aren't that close together. Okay? They really don't represent each other. You know, can I say Mr. Ammett and Mr. Saylor are both college students? I could, but do they have that much else in common? I have no idea. Does that give me enough of a basis to say they have the same attitudes towards certain topics? Clearly, absolutely not. Okay? Then the final one is deductive reasoning. What is deductive reasoning? When the many represent the few, you have a lot of people within a class, and you believe that everyone within the class has the same characteristics. And again, I believe I talked about my next door neighbor, the guy that lives across the street. He's an old white dude just like me. So he assumes that if I'm 58 years old, Caucasian, living in Columbia County in that neighborhood, clearly I am a member of a certain political party. Okay? I am not a member of that. I'm not a member of any political party, but I don't agree with that guy very often. Okay? So, but because he saw put me into a class where the vast majority of people are legitimately members of that political party, he just assumed I was as well. Okay, we also talked about other fallacies. We talked about we've already talked about the hasty generalization and the false analogy. We talked about false authority. What's a false authority, or who's a false authority? Who? The mall cop. We decided that wasn't necessarily the best example, but it was one that you seem hung up on. What happened to you at the mall, Mr. Saylor? Seriously, what happened? Okay, all right. What? Who hurt you? Really, seriously, who hurt? Okay, all right. People here on there going like, what the hell are they talking about? All right. All right, what's another example of a false authority? An internet influencer. Again, if Kim Kardashian wants to tell you that these are the best yoga pants that were ever made, she's probably qualified to speak on that. Okay? If she wants you to, she says you should take Ozempic for your arthritis, I'm not really sure she's that qualified for that. Okay? Everybody understand that? Anybody had any questions about, and then there's the argument ad hominem. What's an argument ad hominem? An argument to the person, or an attack on the person, as opposed to their policies or their reasoning. Okay? I don't have to listen to you. You're from South Carolina. Okay? We've probably heard that before. Arguing, attacking the person as opposed to their ideas. And finally, an appeal to tradition can be summed up in one sentence. We've always done it this way. Why would we ever change? Well, because this way sucks. We need to do something different. Okay? All right, so let's talk about something that we need to deal with when we're talking about persuasion. All right, let me make sure I spell it right, because I'm having one of those days. I'm having a boomer moment. Let's call it that. Did y'all see that New Zealand Parliament, the youngest member of the New Zealand Parliament? Yes, she was up there talking about, she said, hi, I'm 25 years old in 2052. I'll be 49 years old, which is the same average age of all the members of this body. And somebody says something about, well, maybe you're too young to be making decisions. She goes, okay, boomer. And then she just went right back, and I'm like going, even as a boomer, I'm like going, that's pretty awesome. Okay? All right, so cognitive dissonance.
Is it an I or an A?
I don't know. Figure it out. You can look it up online. Okay? Cognitive dissonance, it's an I. Cognitive dissonance. Yeah. Now you're going to make me put my glasses on. I look really old. Thank you very much. Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance says that we cannot hold two core beliefs that are in conflict with each other, or else it makes us feel incredibly uncomfortable. If it gets bad enough, it can even lead to some forms of it can lead to mental health issues. It can also cause people to ultimately do a lot of damage to themselves. Okay? Now, cognitive dissonance, we've seen this in a million movies before, okay? The cop who's all about law and order and all about, saving people, finds he's working now taking money from a drug lord. Okay? We've all seen that. It's half of the episodes of Law and Order. Okay? The preacher's kid who was coming to grips with the fact that they're gay. Okay? And there's that conflict. Their family has told them their entire lives that is the ultimate sin, and now they're having to cope. So there's that conflict. Okay? Cognitive dissonance is just that we cannot hold two competing core beliefs or conflicting core beliefs, okay, without being incredibly uncomfortable. Mary and Jim are in love, deeply in love. So they start talking about marriage. Mary tells Jim that my faith is very important to me, so I want to go back to my home church and be married by my home minister. Jim says, I don't know about that because I'm an atheist. Okay? That's cognitive dissonance, and I do know those two people. They were not named Mary and Jim. I do know those two people, and they ultimately did not get married. Okay? They'd only known each other 8 weeks when they got here. We're thinking about getting engaged, so really, sorry. In most cases, that's not going to work out anyway. Okay? When my Uncle Jack died in 2004, my Uncle Jack was the patriarch of the family. So the family came, and I've told you about my redneck side of my family, the coal miner's daughter side of my family. The other side of my family is an old, big, traditional Southern family. So we all came together and at my cousin's house in New Orleans, and my cousin, another cousin, brought his African-American boyfriend. Okay? Yeah, there was some cognitive dissonance going on in that room. Okay? But then my cousin Jana, who is just like this battleship of a person, just grabbed me and drug me over, and she said, we're talking to him. Let's go. And I was going like, yes, ma'am. And we went over and we talked to him, found out we liked him better than we liked our cousin. It was amazing. After a few minutes, everybody got, resolved their issues with it, and everybody embraced the guy that he was there. He was also, my cousin was also my Uncle Jack's grandson. So we were all there for that. Okay, so we were able to put aside whatever feelings anybody might have had about race and sexual orientation, and focus on family, which became the bigger issue, until we embraced that individual. Okay? Everybody understand what I mean by cognitive dissonance? Now, here's what happens. Okay? Let's jump back to our article from Pediatrics and the survey that said, if I present someone who does not want to vaccinate their children with hardcore evidence that there's no harm possible to be done to your children, they become less likely to vaccinate their children. Okay? What's going on there? Well, it's cognitive dissonance. Because what they're doing is saying, okay, I've been given this evidence that is a conflict with my core beliefs, so I have to strengthen my core belief to overcome this competing data. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Is there any questions about that? Okay? Because when you come in and say, hey, listen, how many people have children in here? Okay? All right? We would do anything for our children, right? Yeah, good, thank you. Two of the people this morning just went, hey, listen, I've had those days. I have 2 daughters. I have had those days when they say, you would do anything for your children, right? And I'm, my response would be, within reason. Yeah, not this morning. Okay? But we would, and when you start telling people and making them accept the fact that you've been pursuing a philosophy that puts your children at risk, what is your reaction to that going to be? All right, let's go. Okay, time to start throwing haymakers, because people don't say that to me. Okay? Well, somehow you have to resolve that. And if these are equally competing ideas, you have to push one or the other out. Okay? And if you tell me that by accepting your point of view, I also have to accept that I've left my children at risk for serious diseases, way more impactful than what I might have run into, I'm going to force that down by making the other side stronger. Everybody understand what I'm saying? Any questions about it? Okay? Now, can you resolve cognitive dissonance? Yes, we're going to talk about some strategies on how to build a persuasive speech. Okay? And then we're going to talk about some obstacles. All right, let me sort my notes out here. I got my notes out of order. But we're going to talk about obstacles first. Okay? So the first obstacle is selective perception. We are bombarded with literally millions of stimuli every day, right? And there's no way for us to take all of them in. So sometimes we just choose not to see things. We just choose to go past them. Okay? Anybody have any questions about that? When I was on that Peru trip. So it's kind of a unique group. In our group, we had a retired F-16 pilot, fighter pilot, and we had, besides myself, we also had a retired Army Ranger. So on the last night, we pulled into Cusco, and we're going to this big celebratory dinner. And so we're getting out of the van, and I look off to my left, about 15, 20 yards away. There's 18 Peruvian police officers in full riot gear, okay, with the shields and the gas mask on their hips, and they're all carrying batons. I mean, they're relaxed, but that's not something we see every day here. Okay, we got into dinner, and I looked at our tour guide, and I said, hey, there were like 18 guys in riot gear standing there. And of course, him doing what he was supposed to, Victor, I did not see this. Well, I took a picture of him. And the two other retired military people went, yeah, we saw the same thing. And nobody else in our group had noticed it. I mean, it was literally from no further than here to that green car, or that gray car, and nobody else had seen it. Okay? It was there, it was within their eye line. Nobody just sort of merited it as anything that they needed to look at. Okay? Turns out, the farmers in the area were going to go on strike on that was a Friday. On Sunday, 2 days away. The farmers in the area were going to go on strike, and they were going to come into town and drive their tractors around all the squares and screw up traffic. And the police were a little afraid that some of the farmers might come in a day or two early, be bored, start drinking, and then then all hell's going to break loose. Okay? But so it wasn't even, but it really struck me that, 3 of us saw it, the other 9 people in the group completely oblivious to it. Okay? So there's selective perception. There's selective recall. Recall. Okay? Anybody who's ever been in any sort of a significant relationship that dealt with this? Hey, do you remember when you told me? Man, I don't remember that at all. I never remember recalling saying that I was going to pick my socks up off the floor every night. I know that's something I don't recall. Well, you said it. Do you have proof? Okay. Did I say it? Yeah, probably. Do I remember it? I don't want to. Because then I have to admit, well, from this point forward, I'll do it. But I don't remember saying it before. Okay? People have a tendency, a Clemson guy. Clemson fan was nice to me the other day. First time it ever happened. I'm sure it's happened before. I just don't want to remember that so I can give Mr. Sailor more crap. Okay? All right? Everybody aware of what we're talking about there? You just don't want to remember things that don't conform to your worldview. All right? Next is selective exposure. So I used to live in kind of a posh neighborhood in Maryland, in Posh County. Anne Arundel County is where Annapolis is, the capital. It's a fairly well-off county. Used to love going up to Baltimore to see the Orioles play at Camden Yards. I had people, when I went, I took the highway straight up. Now that straight highway went through some rather ugly neighborhoods. Baltimore, it's one of the great cities in our nation. I love Baltimore, okay? But there are some parts of Baltimore you got to be very careful when you go into, okay? And they look like parts of Baghdad I've seen, during the war. Burned out buildings that are falling in on themselves. I would used to take that road straight up. I knew people that were friends of mine that went all the way around the perimeter and then came in from the other side. And one of them was even, open enough with me to say, I just don't want to see that. Okay? It's not that they weren't aware of it. They just didn't want to expose themselves to it. They did not want to see that part of Baltimore. Do we not also do that when you're, with any number of times? I'm what?
Just about everything.
Yeah.
About everything.
I just don't want to deal with it. How many of y'all have turned the news off? Yeah, dude, not again. What now? Oh, yeah. There's a Magnum PI rerun on somewhere. Where is that? Okay? Tom Selleck is my hero. All right? The next is there's two that are very close together. A degree of commitment. And then there's public commitment. So you hear this a lot on the news right now, okay? There's, most Republican senators aren't really standing up and defending the president yet because they don't know what the president's done. And they're afraid to come out and say, one day they come out and say, well, there was no quid pro quo with Ukraine. And then there was a quid pro quo and it's proven. So what are they supposed to say now? They've come out with a degree of commitment and with a public commitment that they now have to walk back. Okay? And once we say something out loud, it's really hard for us to walk away from it, isn't it? Okay? Especially if you've been saying it for a very long period of time. And as far as the degree of commitment, if you're from the Evolutionary League of South Carolina, I don't know that there is such an organization, but you're advocating, teaching Darwin's theory of competitive selection in the state of South Carolina, and you're invited to this big Baptist church down here, what is it, Lakeside Baptist Church? The one with the Confederate flags out front? And you're invited to go in there and talk to them about the science of evolution. How do you think that's going to go? That's the best. I mean, they may do some sort of an exorcism. I don't know what's going to happen. Okay? And again, if you want to believe in creationism, that's fine. This is purely for an example. But those people have a degree of commitment and a public commitment that you're at least going to have to acknowledge. Okay? They've been telling their kids that God created the world in 6 days, and that's literally what it means. Okay? And you're going to have to get them, before they agree with you, to walk away from all those public admissions over all those years.
All right, so to make that degree of commitment would be like believing, standing by something you believe, and public would be standing,
by something you've said in public.
Right, okay.
Yeah. They kind of go hand in hand. Now, not everybody at a big Baptist church like that gets the chance to stand up in front of the congregation and profess all their beliefs. Okay, but you can assume that they do have a degree of commitment if that's a core part of their identity. Okay? But for the people, what would happen if, you get up there and you give your 30-minute presentation on evolution and the minister comes up and goes, hey, sorry, I was wrong. These guys have got it. What's going to happen there? The guy's going to get chased out of the building. Okay? And we're seeing that a lot in American politics on both sides of the aisle, where you have to hit all the boxes. Okay? You have to have a degree of commitment for every issue, not just a couple. Okay? All right? So let's talk about strategies. How you can overcome all of this. Okay? The first is going to be what we should be able to do, and that'd be the end of it. Build a case with reason and evidence. You come in, you logically approach the issue, you provide supporting evidence, and based on that weight of evidence, everybody agrees with you. That should theoretically work. In the best of all circumstances, that will work. Okay? We do not live in the best of all circumstances sort of world, though. Okay? When you make your argument, you have to make sure you make it relevant to the audience. You have to use your strongest argument. Now, a couple of you guys on your problem solution speeches, you proved your problem, you gave your effect, showed the cause, then you gave us like 3 solutions. Okay? A lot of times you need to focus and really make that one solution really, really strong. Don't waste time with the other 2. Find your best argument and go with that. Find the biggest cause, find the most dramatic effect, find the single best solution and show that it's really practical and really effective. Okay? Don't think that you can throw a bunch of stuff out there, because if you throw out 3 possible solutions and one of them is really weak, what do you think they're going to pick? They're going to focus on that one that's really weak and they're going to go after you there. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, the second way, it's called the foot in the door. All right, you've been tasked by the Aiken County to go out and do a survey of all the schools in Aiken County and find out what they need to fix all the maintenance and all the infrastructure issues in the county school system. Okay? How many people actually went to Aiken County schools in here? Okay, then I will keep my mouth shut, because today I was talking about how horrible, Aiken High School is falling apart, and 2 people from Midland and 1 from North Augusta just went, oh yeah, right. So I'm not. What? See, now look, I mean, we've scrapped. Just, okay, see, this is why I wasn't going to bring this up. This is clearly my fault, and I apologize for even opening this up for discussion. Okay? So, yeah, stop. I admit that apparently my experience is over at Midland Valley, okay? Which is a school that needs some help. So I just, I assumed that all of the schools were like that, and then people started getting angry, okay? As we just saw, okay? So you go in and you find out you need $180 million to fix all the schools in Aiken County. So you walk up to the county commission and say, hey, listen, I need $180 million. What's the county commission going to say? Just get out. What do you want, crack? Leave, okay? But if I go in and say, hey, listen, biggest primary concern right now is we need $40,000 to fix the air conditioning and heating systems at Midland Valley. That's got to be fixed. It's a critical issue. We have to fix it now. I need $40,000. What are they going to say? Well, the funny part was the Midland Valley students, former Midland Valley students, both just went, no, leave. And I'm going, okay, the linger there. Okay, but do you have a better chance of getting the heating and air conditioning project approved for $40,000 than you have of getting $180 million for the whole thing all at once? Okay? Foot in the door works if I can get $40,000 this month for the air conditioners, and then I can go back and say, what is it, Mossy Point Elementary School? Mossy Point Elementary School has some mold issues and we need to abate the mold. I need $23,000 for that. Okay, here's $23,000. Then we've got North Augusta High School has got a sinkhole in the parking lot. I need $15,000, and you can go back over and over and over again. Foot in the door works as long as you're going to be able to go back and ask and re-persuade and ask for more of what your ultimate end goal is. Okay? So in other words, going in and asking for everything at once, you ask for what you need in increments. You get your foot in the door so you can keep the door open and keep asking for more. Okay? Anybody have any questions about foot in the door? The opposite of foot in the door is door in the face. And we've all used door in the face. I gave you an example of door in the face. Hey, Mom, I know my curfew is 10 o'clock, but big party, can I stay out till 2 o'clock Saturday? No. Okay, you're right, I overstepped. How about 11? Okay? Somebody did that last week, okay? I don't know when your curfew ended. I don't know if you still have a curfew. She's like, but we've all done that, right? You ask for more than you could ever expect, knowing that you're in all likelihood going to get turned down. Now, every once in a while, they'll go, oh, yeah, all right, go ahead. Okay, as my dad always used to say, don't cost nothing to ask. Okay, so every once in a while they're going to say, sure. But if they say no, you then immediately come back with a decreased request. What does that make you look like?
Smart.
Makes it look like you're willing to negotiate. All right, I may have overstepped, but hey, can we say 11:30? Okay. Hey, listen, we need $180 million, and you really only need about $60 million. I need $180 million to fix these schools. You're not going to get $180 million. Okay, what about 140? You're not going to. So by the time you get to 60, they think you're saving them a ton of money. They think you've saved them $80 million.
But people do that in job interviews where they ask for more money up front, knowing that they're not going to get it, and then they slowly backpedal. So that
Yeah.
they end up getting more money.
That's in a job interview. That's why I like working for the government, because your salary is set by the state or the federal legislature. You can't really, when I started going into the contracting world and I had to negotiate for my salary, that was like, having teeth pulled. So what's your salary requirement going to be on this? I don't know. What do you have available? Well, we need to know what you want. It's like, just poke me in the eye with a pen, okay? That would be less painful for me. But yeah, that's exactly, they always tell you, figure out what you think you're going to get paid, tack on 25%. That way you can negotiate back down to what your actual goal was. And then every once in a while, if you want 60, ask for 90. And every once in a while, they're going to go, we can't get you 90, but can we give you 85? You're like going, no, I was going to settle for 60, so let's go. No, you're going to take the 85. Okay? And please don't come and ask me for how to negotiate. I've negotiated for 2 paychecks in my entire life. And they just came in and basically said the contract allows us to pay you X. And I went, okay. Okay? All right?
They can always watch Pawn Star or American Figures to learn how to negotiate.
Yeah, because those are reality TV. Okay, show your views are in line with existing values. Okay. When I worked for a veterans nonprofit here at the CSRA, we used to have people come in all the time saying, "Hey, listen, we would like for you to say this is good for veterans." Okay, and then we would enter into an agreement. We used to have an agreement with Aiken Technical College, Augusta University, USC Aiken. Those have all sort of fallen away. But we would allow them to use our logo, and we would use their logo in an exchange saying, these guys are good for veterans. Well, those requests usually wound up on my desk. I was the director of strategy, and somehow or the other it became my job to vet all these things. So we got this proposal for an office park, industrial park. You guys know what those big chunks of warehouses that sit on the side of a highway? So they came in with this proposal. They wanted this organization, my organization, to stamp that this is good for veterans. So I read it, and I called the guy, and I said, I'd like to talk to you about it. Can I stop by your office? And we went in his office. And I said, so I read your proposal, and I'm not sure what the veterans piece is. And he's like, oh, yeah, we're going to be good for veterans. I'm going like, so are you going to like give cheaper leases to veterans-owned businesses? Oh, no, we're going to do that. Well, are you going to give like breaks to people who hire veterans? Oh, we're not going to do that either. And I went through 3 or 4 other things. I said, so what's the veterans piece in this? He said, oh, well, veterans can come get jobs here. And I went, that's not really good for veterans now, is it? So we did not support that. But this guy wanted to go out because there was a lot of pushback from the local authorities and from the local residents. They did not want this industrial park in this neighborhood. He thought if he could show that he was in line with existing values, we love veterans. Who hates veterans? Okay? He thought it'd be okay. All right? Everybody understand? Any questions about that? And again, how many times have you thought, hey, it's Veterans Day, come buy a mattress? Okay? They had Veterans Appreciation Day over at SRP Park, I think, like 4 times last year. Okay? I mean, it's just something we love veterans. We love, hey, do it for the children. Okay? If you can justify any program you want to, as long as you say it's good for kids. Right? Because we love kids. I'm looking at the 3 parents, and they're like, yeah. Okay? Show it's consistent. It's in line with an alternative value system. Okay, we've talked a lot about global warming in here and how we've approached that. All right? So when Donald Trump said we're going to withdraw from the Paris climate change agreement, a lot of people got upset. They said you're going to be killing baby seals, the polar bears are going to die, Charleston's going to flood, Vanuatu is going to disappear, and the general reaction was meh. Okay? Then somebody came out and said, hey, listen. And he said one of the things he said is we're going to stop giving government subsidies to alternative energy industries. We're going to stop giving tax breaks to people who put alternative heating systems in their houses. And somebody came up and said, hey, listen, you don't need to care about the environment. You don't need to care about global warming. But right now, the United States employs more people in building alternative energy production systems than any other nation in the world. And we do that because of all the government commitment we have to these systems. If we pull that, all that's going to shift over to China. We make more photovoltaic cells to produce electricity. We'll build more solar water heaters in the United States than anywhere in the world. And if you pull all that support, all that's going to shift over to China. So you may not care at all about global warming, but I bet you care about jobs. Okay? So suddenly people went, for about a minute and a half, they went, okay, wait a minute, now there's an argument I have to deal with. Okay, at least if not, you didn't get them to, at least you got them to slow down for a second and think about it. Okay? So if you can't find an existing value, so find something that they can buy, that they can agree with. Okay? An alternative value system that everybody agrees on. Okay? Now there's two more that I am going to tell you to approach carefully. Okay? They are both valid reasons or ways to persuade. The first is offer a reward. Okay? Show me the money. It's perfectly valid. We do it all the time. Hey, come down and get your $4,000 rebate on your new Lincoln Mercury. Okay? That's a reward. If you vote for me, I will get you more money and you'll have a higher standard of living. That's offering a reward. Okay? If you get all A's, I give you $5. Okay? My parents never did that. My parents said, if you don't get on the AV honor roll, if you get on the AV honor roll, you get to keep watching television. Okay? That was a reward in my house. Okay? What's the problem with offering a reward? You got to pay the reward. Okay? Because the first time you don't pay it, what happens? People stop listening to you. And above and beyond that, what happens if you pay the reward this time?
They want it again.
They want it again, and what happens over time? They want to see a little bit more. Okay? Hey, last year it was $5. I'm in middle school now. I expect to see $7.50.
I got into that problem with my next door neighbor's kids, 4 of them, and they were all doing bad in school. And the next thing I know, I offered $5 each for their A's, and I shelled out $100-something.
You offered your next door neighbor kids money for their grades?
Yeah, I love them. I love them. I do all kinds of stuff for them, but I love them. But yeah, they all jacked me up.
You want to
They all
move?
went and got good grades. Now they're wanting to.
Where do you live, and is the house next to you for sale?
It is actually. They moved.
Will you cut my
But I
grass?
done found them again, and
Will you cut my grass? Because
no, I have somebody to do that for me. But yeah, they got it.
yeah,
All 4 of them.
yeah. You notice what
I was like,
the phrase there was, right? I found them again. That's a little creepy, just a little bit. I hunted them down. Okay. All right. When you offer a reward, sooner or later that reward is no longer a reward. That reward is just what they expect. In a lot of lesser developed nations, and it's called a bread riot, where the government subsidizes the food. And it used to be bread was a major staple of a lot of these diets. So the government would subsidize the food, so you're paying like 2 cents for this massive loaf of bread, when that bread costs $1.50 to produce. And so suddenly when the government runs out of money, they stop the food subsidies, and that loaf of bread goes from 2 cents to $1.75, and people burn the grocery stores down. Okay? That reward eventually no longer becomes a reward. it becomes an expected subsidy. Okay? So once you start paying a reward as a persuasive measure, you better plan on keep paying it. People very rarely accept a one-time reward. The other is arouse fear. Okay? Now, arousing fear is a perfectly adequate, we use it all the time to persuade. Okay? Do not walk across a dark parking lot at night. Why? Because you'll get attacked. That is arousing fear for a persuasive point, which everyone in this room is probably going to say is perfectly valid. Okay? Telling your kids, don't touch the stove, you'll burn your hand off. You're not going to burn your hand off, you might get burned, but it's arousing fear. It's perfectly valid. What's the problem with using fear as a persuasive means?
Nothing.
How many of y'all saw the original Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasant? It came out in 1978. How many people died in that movie? 4. And people were stunned. We're up to like what? Halloween 47 or something?
Right.
If you don't kill 13 people in the first 3 minutes, people aren't going to watch that movie anymore. Okay? You got like what? Saw 14? Okay? Whatever it is. I mean, I watched 10 minutes of one of those movies and I was like, okay? I watched the first season of Walking Dead. Okay, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. I watched like 2 minutes of The Talking Dead, the after show, and I'm like, holy jeez! That's because fear attenuates. You have to keep ratcheting up the fear, or people aren't going to be persuaded by it anymore. And I will call him out by name this time. I normally don't do this. Donald Trump started his campaign by labeling every immigrant from south of the border a rapist and a murderer. That worked for a while, and then we're coming up to the 2018 elections, and that fear has attenuated. So what does he have to do?
Find something else.
It's gone from them being individual rapists and murderers to now we are facing a national security threat from a foreign invasion. Okay? You have to keep increasing what makes people afraid. Oh, it's Cornell. That's one of my former students. Okay? You have to keep ratcheting it up. Now, I grew up in the 60s, 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. Politicians like Strom Thurmond in South Carolina, Ross Barnett in Mississippi, George Wallace in Alabama, Edward Faubus in Arkansas. All of them, 1954, course order desegregation of schools, and their standard comment was, if we desegregate the schools, your daughters are going to get raped in school. Okay? That was their starting point. Okay? And then, in order to continue to control, they had to ratchet that fear up. At some point, no, George Wallace and Ross Barnett and Strom Thurmond never told anybody to go out and lynch anybody. Okay? But at some point, the fear got so high in the white community, they felt like it was a perfectly viable option to go out and murder African Americans for no other reason than they were afraid of them. Okay? George Wallace would eventually, before he died, acknowledge his role in that. A lot of people said he did it really close to before he died. He was just trying to get into heaven. Okay? It was so late. I mean, he had lived with it for so long. But he even admitted it had gone too far. Okay? So when you continue to ratchet that fear up, what happens when you're afraid? Sometimes you react irrationally. And if you use fear long enough, committed enough to it, people are going to react to it, and you may not be appreciative of the reaction. Okay? And the reaction is called the law of unintended consequences. Okay? All right. 3 things left real quick. 4 things, actually. First of all, there are 2 styles of persuasive speaking, and they're real simple. One-sided and two-sided. One-sided is where you only talk about your point of view and your issues. Okay? Hey, I'm here to talk to you today about how fertilizer is killing the fish in the Clark Hill Reservoir, and why we've got to stop using fertilizer like we do in the catchment area. Okay? Two-sided persuasive speech. Hey, listen, a lot of people are going to talk to you about how we need fertilizer for the agriculture. And if we stop using fertilizer the way we do now, our agricultural industry in the area is going to suffer. I'm here to tell you today, and we'll talk about that, but I'm also going to tell you why that's not true. And I'm going to tell you why we don't need that much fertilizer. Everybody understand? When would you use a one-sided persuasive speech? Remember those three audience dispositions? When the crowd agrees with you, or they're at worst neutral to you. Okay? And you don't think that anybody is going to come in and counter-persuade. When they disagree with you, you already know they're in disagreement. You've got to talk about the other side. Right? Or also, if you find out, and I don't know but the Farm Bureau is coming in a week. Hey, listen, I understand you guys are going to talk to the Farm Bureau in a week. Let me ask you this. Ask them some questions. If they need the fertilizer that much, so when the guy comes in the next week and gives a one-sided persuasive speech, hey, have you guys got any questions? Hands go up. Hey, Vic McInnes was in here last week and he said this, 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 and this. What's your response? Okay, you've already inoculated them to future counter-persuasion. Okay?
So for the one-sided, then it's like you would come in and persuade just because you think everybody else is going to agree with you anyhow, so it's like the easier of the two?
Yeah, they already agree with you. They're at worst neutral, and there's probably not going to be anybody counter-persuading in the future.
All right.
Could two-sided also be like devil's advocate?
Yeah. If you want to already throw out some, but yeah, just don't, hey, a lot of people would say that we need the fertilizer. Refute the other side. I've seen people do two-sided persuasive speech and get a really convincing argument for the other guys, and then just leave it. Okay? And it's like, wow.
So if we do a two-sided, then that means that we can come in and say, so-and-so says this, but then this place over here says something completely opposite. Then it's my job to give my opinion to help you.
It's your job to provide evidence as to which is, supporting your idea.
Right. But, I mean, if I'm giving two sides of it, how do I get them to the one that I am? That's the whole point of
You
persuasion.
show what they're saying.
Okay.
You refute it. You give a better idea.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Last two things. Ethically, remember, okay? All your persuasive speeches should be done for the betterment of your audience. You should be looking out for their best interest. And you should be open and provide them with information so that they can make their own decisions. Remember, coercion is not persuasion. Okay? And if you get caught, let's go all the way back to the second day of class. If you get caught lying in order to be persuasive, what's going to be the result? You're not going to be persuasive anymore. Remember credibility-centered ethics? Where if you no longer have credibility, you will no longer be persuasive? Okay? Anybody have any questions about that? Last thing. I want you to remember this, and I always do this last, so that you remember. The last thing in a persuasive speech, is the call to action. It's where you tell the people what they need to do next. And it should not have the phrase, I hope, you're probably, some of you will want to, maybe. Your call to action needs to be absolute, because if you spend 4.5, 5 minutes persuading people to a certain idea and you close it out with, at this point, you may want to go out. No. You go out with strength and power. So now that we've talked about how great it is to adopt a dog, I want to tell you where the local SPCA shelter is. And I want you to go to the shelter and I want you to adopt a dog. You don't give them an out. You don't say, and if you're in the mind to, no, you tell them you want. They can decide on their own. You don't need to give them an out. Does anybody have any questions about that? It is a firm, confident statement of the action you want. Everybody everybody's closing up, getting ready to go. We're not done yet. Of the actions you want your audience to take. A lot of times I get informative speeches, and when it comes down to the, and again, it happens a lot. And for you guys that are going to come in here and tell us we need to adopt a dog, I get that speech a lot, okay? If you're going to tell us to adopt a dog, you don't end it with, so now you know why adopting a dog is good. Because that's an informative speech. That's not a persuasive speech. Your call to action is going to be 10 points on this next speech out of 125. Separate from the rest of the conclusion, call to action is going to be 10 points because it's that important. And your call to action is a specific action you want. It should start with something like, now I want you to. Now you should. Now I'm sure you will want to. Okay? It should have confidence. It should use action verbs. It should be, don't go out and go, yeah, now I'll chase you down if you don't do that. No, not that, okay? But it should be a confident statement of what you want your audience to do after your speech is over. Write your congressman. Now, I want you to go online and I want you to get your congressman and your senator's addresses and I want you to write them a letter. Don't send them an email. I want you to write them a letter expressing your outrage over this. Okay? Because that's when, just like with your attention device, you have to hammer that. It has to be, they have to have absolutely no doubt as to what you're thinking and what you want them to do. Okay? And it really frustrates me a lot of times these days where somebody will come in and give a great persuasive speech and they'll go, so if you feel like it, I'll be hanging around to give you some information after. If you don't have confidence, if you're using weasel words like maybe, possibly, probably, they're not going to have any confidence in you either. So they're just going to, okay, well, that was nice. Does anybody have any questions about that call to action? I will say this again in class on Tuesday because we start persuasive speeches a week from today, and I want to make sure that everybody does a great call to action at the end of their speech. What questions do you have at this point? We got a minute and a half. Man, my timing's great. Yes, ma'am?
I know we don't have to send you the outline, but we are still printing one in, correct?
Yeah, you have to turn in a hard copy on Thursday. Anybody not here on Thursday, if you do not have an excused absence, you will not be allowed to do the event.
Wait,
Okay?
We're
So-
turning it in the day that we're talking, or is it?
You're turning it in Thursday, next Thursday.
Okay.
That's when speeches start. You need an excused absence if you're not here on Thursday. Okay? We will then not have class the next Tuesday. We will finish our persuasive speeches the next Thursday. Okay? Tuesday, we're probably going to watch President Obama's eulogy at Mother Emanuel Church, and then we're going to talk about culture. Culture. Okay, what questions do you have?
How do you want us to outline this anyway?
Outline it just like you always have. Same format, everything. Evidence in red, 3 pieces of evidence, 4 to 6 minutes, 2 note cards. Okay? And remember, I had an inordinate number of people try to get away with 3 note cards this last time, and they all lost 10 points. Okay? Don't do that. And just so you guys are happy, leave on a good note. There's going to be an opportunity for 20 extra credit points before the end of the semester. I'll let you know what that is later on. Probably tell you next week. All right, everybody have a good weekend. Be safe.